My name is Doris, and I'm 58 years old. Just imagine my shock when I received an $85,000 bill for my son's wedding. A wedding I wasn't even allowed to attend. The most painful part wasn't the astronomical amount, but the handwritten note attached, "Be thankful I let you contribute." As I stared at that piece of paper, I didn't cry or scream. I just smiled. Let me know where you're watching from and hit that subscribe button right now. Let me tell you how a mother's unconditional love was put to the ultimate test. My son Alexander, Alex for short, is my only child, and he's 32 now. Looking at old photographs sometimes makes my heart ache for the sweet little boy who once couldn't fall asleep without his mom reading him a bedtime story. Those memories feel like they belong to another lifetime entirely. Alex's father, Frank, was the love of my life. We met in college, married young, and built a beautiful life together. Frank was a dedicated high school math teacher, beloved by his students and our community alike. I still remember how he'd come home every day with a new story about his classroom adventures. His warm laugh would fill our modest 3-bedroom home in the suburbs of Chicago. Our life wasn't extravagant, but it was rich in all the ways that mattered. Frank and I worked hard, saved diligently, and made sure Alex never wanted for anything essential. Frank coached Alex's Little League team, taught him to ride a bike, and spent countless hours helping with math homework at the kitchen table. Everything changed when Frank suffered a massive heart attack 15 years ago. He was only 45. The doctors said it was a genetic condition no one could have predicted. I became a widow at 43, and Alex lost his father at 17, right when a boy needs his dad the most. Those first years were excruciating. I had to be both mother and father while processing my own grief. I worked full-time as a marketing executive for a regional firm, often putting in 60-hour weeks to maintain our lifestyle and save for Alex's college education. Frank had life insurance, thankfully, but I was determined to preserve that money for Alex's future. When Alex left for Northwestern University the following year, I channeled my empty nest sadness into advancing my career. I took night classes to earn an MBA, climbed the corporate ladder, and eventually became a senior marketing director. What few people knew was that I also became quite skilled at investing. Frank had always handled our finances, so I educated myself by reading everything I could find about personal finance and investment strategies. Those investments, along with prudent saving, allowed me to help Alex throughout college. I paid his tuition in full, bought him a reliable car for his 21st birthday, and even helped with the security deposit on his first apartment after graduation. When he landed his first job at a prestigious financial firm in Chicago, I couldn't have been prouder. My boy was following his dreams, and I'd done everything in my power to support him. For several years after college, Alex and I maintained a close relationship. We had Sunday dinners together weekly. We vacationed together annually. Nothing fancy, usually just a week at a lakeside cabin in Michigan or Wisconsin. He'd call me for advice on everything from how to iron a dress shirt properly to negotiating his first salary. Looking back, there were early warning signs I chose to ignore. Alex often forgot his wallet when we went out to eat. He'd ask for loans for unexpected expenses that somehow never got repaid. When I mentioned these patterns gently, he'd become defensive. "Mom, I work so hard. Don't I deserve nice things? You don't understand the pressure I'm under." I always backed down. After losing Frank, I was terrified of damaging my relationship with the only immediate family I had left. So I kept giving, emotionally and financially, while asking for very little in return. The real turning point came 3 years ago when Alex met Veronica Blackwell at a charity gala. The daughter of real estate magnate Edward Blackwell, Veronica came from the kind of wealth that made my comfortable middle-class savings look like pocket change. She worked in art consulting, a job that seemed to involve a lot of international travel but very little actual work from what I could gather. The first time Alex mentioned her, I could hear the awe in his voice. "Mom, she's incredible. Her family has a compound in the Hamptons. Her father plays golf with the governor. You should see her apartment on Lakeshore Drive. Not once did he mention her personality, her values, or whether she made him laugh. It was all about what she had and who she knew. Still, I was happy he'd found someone who excited him, and I looked forward to meeting the woman who had so captivated my son. That first meeting should have been another warning sign. Alex brought Veronica to my home for dinner. I spent the entire day cooking his favorite lasagna from scratch, and even bought a bouquet of fresh flowers for the table, something I rarely did for myself. Veronica arrived in a white Range Rover, dressed in what I later learned was a $3,000 casual outfit. She barely concealed her disdain as she stepped into my modest home. "It's quaint," she said, looking around my living room with its comfortable but worn furniture. "Very retro." My furniture wasn't retro. It was simply well-maintained and practical. But I smiled and thanked her, determined to make a good impression. Throughout dinner, Veronica dominated the conversation with stories about luxury vacations, celebrity encounters, and her father's business empire. Whenever I attempted to share something about Alex's childhood or our family traditions, she would politely but firmly redirect the conversation. "That's sweet," she'd say dismissively before launching into another tale about summering in the south of France or attending an exclusive fashion show. Alex, to my dismay, seemed transformed in her presence. My son, who had always been thoughtful and down-to-earth, laughed too loudly at her jokes, agreed with her every opinion, and even adopted phrases and mannerisms that were entirely unlike him. When I brought out the homemade tiramisu for dessert, Alex's favorite since childhood, Veronica declined with a wave of her hand. "I avoid processed sugar. It's basically poison." Alex, who had always devoured my tiramisu, pushed his plate away. "Actually, I'm trying to cut back on sugar too," he said, not meeting my eyes. After they left that evening, I cried for the first time since Frank's funeral. Something told me I was losing my son, but I couldn't quite articulate why or how. In the months that followed, Alex became increasingly distant. Our weekly Sunday dinners dwindled to monthly, then quarterly. He stopped answering my calls, responding instead with brief texts hours or sometimes days later. "Busy with work. Talk soon." "Can't chat now. Deadline." Tied up with Veronica's family event. When we did speak, he would drop casual references to the new world he was entering through Veronica. When we were at the Blackwell's ski chalet in Aspen, or "Edward took us out on the company yacht," or "Veronica's introducing me to people who can really help my career." I tried to maintain our connection. I invited them for holidays, sent thoughtful gifts, suggested lunch dates that worked with their schedules. Most invitations were declined. The gifts received perfunctory thank you texts. The relationship that had sustained me after Frank's death was withering before my eyes. One particularly painful memory stands out. I had tickets to the Chicago Symphony Orchestra. Alex and I had attended annually since he was in high school. It was our tradition, one of the few Frank had established, that we'd continued after his passing. "Mom, we can't make it," Alex said when I called to confirm. "We're having dinner with the Harringtons that night. Robert Harrington is on the board at my firm. It's important for my career." "Could we go another night?" I suggested. "This is our tradition." "It's just a concert, Mom," he replied, irritation evident in his voice. "There will be others. You don't understand how networking works in my industry. These connections are everything." I attended alone, surrounded by families and couples fighting back tears through Beethoven's Fifth Symphony. The final straw in our deteriorating relationship came when Alex called to tell me he'd proposed to Veronica. He didn't share this news in person or even in a dedicated phone call. It was a brief mention at the end of a rushed conversation. "By the way, Veronica and I are engaged. Her father's thrilled. We're thinking spring wedding next year at the Blackwell estate on Long Island." No invitation to celebrate, no request for my blessing or input, just an afterthought as if he were telling me about a new restaurant he'd tried. "Congratulations," I managed to say through the lump in my throat. "I'm so happy for you both." "Thanks, Mom. Gotta run. Dinner with the Blackwells to celebrate. Talk later." He hung up before I could say I loved him. I learned about the wedding preparations not from my son, but through mutual friends. Alex's college roommate Brian mentioned being asked to be a groomsman. My neighbor's daughter, who worked at an exclusive florist in the city, let slip that she was working on arrangements for the Blackwell-Harris wedding. I swallowed my pride and called Alex. "I'd love to help with the wedding plans," I said. "Whatever you need, venue hunting, cake tastings, dress shopping with Veronica." "Actually, Mom," he replied, sounding uncomfortable, "Veronica's mother has it all under control. They have a wedding planner who handles these society events all the time. But thanks for offering." Still, I persisted. I managed to get myself invited to a cake tasting, only to find myself seated at the far end of the table while Veronica, her mother Claudia, and the wedding planner made all the decisions. When I gently suggested a flavor that Alex had always loved, Veronica's mother cut me off. "Doris, dear," Claudia said with a tight smile, "chocolate raspberry is so conventional. The Blackwells have always served champagne cake with gold leaf at family weddings. It's tradition." I didn't point out that it wasn't Alex's family tradition. I was learning to pick my battles. One evening, scrolling through social media, I discovered photos of a lavish engagement party at the Blackwell estate. Hundreds of guests in formal attire, champagne towers, ice sculptures, and a live band. In the center of it all, Alex and Veronica looking like they'd stepped out of a magazine. I hadn't been invited. When I called Alex the next day, trying to keep the hurt from my voice, he sounded defensive. "It was Veronica's parents' thing, Mom. They organized it. I didn't have any say in the guest list." "But you're my only child, Alex. I should have been there for your engagement celebration." "It wasn't that kind of party," he said dismissively. "It was more of a business networking thing. You wouldn't have known anyone there. You wouldn't have fit in." Those last words stung like a slap. Wouldn't have fit in. As if I were some embarrassing relation best kept hidden from his new sophisticated circle. For months, I tried to arrange a one-on-one lunch or dinner with Alex. I wanted to talk to him away from Veronica's influence to understand what was happening to our relationship, but he always had an excuse. He was too busy with work. He had plans with Veronica. He was meeting with Edward Blackwell to discuss future opportunities. Then came the phone call that broke my heart completely. It was a Tuesday evening. I was preparing a simple dinner for myself when my phone rang. Seeing Alex's name, I answered eagerly. "Hi, sweetheart. I was just thinking about you." "Mom," he said, his voice formal in a way I'd never heard before. "I need to talk to you about the wedding." "Of course, I've been hoping we could discuss it. I'd love to help in any way I can." A long pause. Then, "That's the thing, Mom. Veronica and I have been talking, and we think it's best if you don't attend the wedding." The wooden spoon I was holding clattered to the floor. "What did you say?" "It's nothing personal," he continued, as if that made any sense. "The Blackwells are inviting a lot of important people. Business associates, political connections. Veronica's father has a certain image to maintain. And I don't fit that image," I said flatly. "Mom, you have to understand. This wedding is as much about business as it is about Veronica and me. Her father is introducing me to people who could completely change my career trajectory. We need everything to be perfect. And I'm not perfect," I whispered. "That's not what I meant. It's just, you're not familiar with this world. The way people dress, talk the etiquette. Veronica's worried you might feel uncomfortable or say something inappropriate." "Inappropriate?" I echoed, unable to believe what I was hearing. "Alex, I raised you to have impeccable manners. I worked in corporate America for 30 years. I know how to behave in polite society. It's different, Mom. These are billionaires, celebrities, political figures. The stakes are higher. I'm your mother, I said, my voice breaking. The woman who raised you alone after your father died, who worked 60-hour weeks to put you through college, who has loved you unconditionally your entire life, and you're banning me from your wedding because I might embarrass you. Please don't make this harder than it already is, Alex replied, sounding annoyed rather than remorseful. This is about my future. If you really love me, you'll understand that. After we hung up, I sat on my kitchen floor and wept until there were no tears left. Then I wrote a letter to Alex, pouring out my heart. I reminded him of our life together, of Frank's values, of the close-knit family we'd once been. I told him I would always love him, but that his decision had wounded me deeply. I mailed the letter the next day. A week passed with no response. When I tried to call, I discovered Alex had blocked my number. My son was getting married, and I was not welcome at his wedding. The child I had carried, birthed, raised, and loved with every fiber of my being had decided I wasn't good enough to witness one of the most important days of his life. The wedding took place on a Saturday in May. I spent the day alone in my garden, pulling weeds with such ferocity my neighbors might have thought I was engaged in combat rather than gardening. I avoided social media, knowing it would be flooded with images of the celebration I wasn't permitted to attend. 1 week later, a thick envelope arrived from a law firm I didn't recognize. Assuming it was junk mail, I almost tossed it aside. But something compelled me to open it. Inside was an itemized bill totaling $85,000. The header read, "Wedding expenses, Alexander Harris and Veronica Blackwell." I sat down hard on my hallway bench, scanning the list with increasing disbelief. Venue rental at Blackwell Estate, Hamptons, $15,000. Notation: discounted from normal $25,000 rate. Premium open bar service, $12,000. Custom floral arrangements imported from Holland, $8,500. Michelin-starred chef and catering staff, $14,000. Photography and videography package, $7, $500. Designer wedding cake, $3,000. Live orchestra and late-night DJ, $5,000. Fireworks display, $4, $500. Luxury transportation for wedding party, $3, $500. Honeymoon accommodations, Bali, 2 weeks, $12,000. The list went on and on, each item more extravagant than the last. At the bottom, in Alex's familiar handwriting, was a personal note. "Mom, here's your share of the wedding expenses. Veronica's parents covered their half. Be thankful I let you contribute to our special day. It's what any good mother would do. Venmo or check is fine. Alex." No thank you. No acknowledgement that I'd been excluded from the event I was now being asked to fund. Not even a wedding photo. I read the note again, unable to process what I was seeing. Be thankful I let you contribute. As if he were doing me a favor by demanding $85,000 for a wedding I hadn't been allowed to attend. The audacity, the cruelty, the complete lack of self-awareness. It was staggering. This wasn't the son I had raised. This was a stranger wearing Alex's face. I sat with that bill in my hands until the sun set, alternating between tears of grief and rage. The pain was physical, a crushing weight on my chest that made it difficult to breathe. I hadn't felt this kind of anguish since the day Frank died. That night, I cried myself to sleep, the bill on my nightstand, like a malevolent presence watching over me. The next morning, my phone rang at an ungodly hour. It was Dorothy, my closest friend since college days. "Doris, what the hell is going on?" she demanded without preamble. "Brian just told me Alex sent you a bill for his wedding. A wedding you weren't even invited to." Brian was Dorothy's son and had been in the wedding party. Apparently, he'd overheard Alex bragging about sending me the bill. "It's true," I confirmed, my voice hoarse from crying. $85,000, with a note telling me to be thankful he's letting me contribute. That little shit, Dorothy exclaimed, her outrage oddly comforting. After everything you've done for him, Frank would be turning in his grave. I don't know what to do, Dot, I admitted. Part of me wants to pay it just to keep some connection to him. He's all I have left. Absolutely not, Dorothy said firmly. That's not love, Doris. That's emotional extortion. Alex is treating you like an ATM, not a mother. Before I could respond, my other line beeped. It was Evelyn, Frank's mother, and Alex's grandmother. I'll call you back, I told Dorothy. Doris, Evelyn said when I answered, her voice shaking with anger. Please tell me what I'm hearing isn't true. Brian's mother called me. She said Alexander banned you from the wedding and is now demanding you pay for it. At 82, Evelyn was still sharp as a tack and fiercely protective of family. Frank had been her only child, making Alex her only grandchild, and me her only daughter-in-law. We'd remained close after Frank's death. It's true, Evelyn, I confirmed, too exhausted to sugarcoat it. I've never been so ashamed, she said. Frank and I raised him better than this. His grandfather and I are cutting him out of our will immediately. No grandson of ours treats his mother this way. Please don't do anything hasty, I urged, though her support meant the world to me. It's not hasty. It's long overdue. That boy has been spoiled and entitled for years, but this crosses a line. He's spitting on his father's memory with this behavior. After talking with Evelyn, I sat at my kitchen table staring at the wedding bill. The initial shock had worn off, leaving a cold clarity in its wake. I realized with painful certainty that my son valued me only for what I could give him financially. The years of emotional support, the sacrifices, the unconditional love, none of that mattered to him anymore. I was simply a checkbook in human form. That night, I made a decision. I would not be treated this way anymore, not even by my only child. It was time to stand up for myself, to honor the woman Frank had loved, the woman who had successfully raised a child and built a career on her own. It was time to be Doris Harris again, not just Alex's mother or Frank's widow. The next morning, I called Thomas Wright, an attorney who had been a close friend of Frank's. We'd stayed in touch over the years, meeting occasionally for lunch to reminisce about Frank and catch up on each other's lives. Doris, what a pleasant surprise, Thomas said when I was shown into his office. It's been too long. I need legal advice, Tom, I replied, getting straight to the point. I explained the situation, showing him the wedding bill and Alex's note. Thomas's expression darkened as he read. First things first, he said, pushing the bill aside. You have absolutely no legal obligation to pay this. There was no contract, no agreement, nothing that would hold up in court. This is simply an invoice created after the fact with no basis in law. Are you sure? I asked. Alex made it sound like this was my parental duty. It's not, Thomas said firmly. Parents have legal obligations to minor children, but adult children aren't entitled to lavish weddings at their parents' expense, especially weddings the parents aren't even invited to. I nodded, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders. There's more I want to discuss, Tom. It's about my estate planning. Thomas raised an eyebrow. Go on. What Alex and Veronica don't know, what almost no one knows, is that I'm actually quite wealthy. Thomas looked surprised. Define quite wealthy. I took a deep breath. After Frank died, I threw myself into learning about investing. I was terrified of financial insecurity, of not being able to provide for Alex's future. What started as a necessity became something of a passion. I have a talent for it, apparently. I showed Thomas my financial portfolio on my tablet. His eyes widened. Doris, You're worth millions. 7.3 million at last valuation, I confirmed. Plus the house, which is paid off and worth about 400,000. I've lived well below my means for years, partly out of habit, and partly because I never wanted Alex to know. I was saving it all for him for his future. And now? Thomas asked. Now I want to change my will. Alex has been my primary beneficiary with small bequests to Evelyn and a few charities Frank supported. I want to reverse that balance. For the next 2 hours, Thomas and I restructured my estate plan. I established the Frank Harris Memorial Scholarship Fund, which would receive the bulk of my estate, to help deserving students from modest backgrounds pursue higher education, just as Frank had helped countless students during his teaching career. I left Evelyn a generous sum for her remaining years and some meaningful amounts to friends who had stood by me. For Alex, I left only the house and a small trust that would pay out monthly over 20 years rather than in a lump sum. It was enough to provide some security, but not enough to fund the extravagant lifestyle he'd grown accustomed to with Veronica. "Are you sure about this, Doris?" Thomas asked when we'd finished. "It's a dramatic change." "I'm sure," I replied. "The boy I raised, the son who would have deserved that inheritance, doesn't exist anymore. Or if he does, he's buried under layers of greed and social climbing. Maybe someday he'll find his way back to the values Frank and I taught him. But I won't reward his current behavior." As I left Thomas's office, I felt lighter than I had in years. I was taking back control of my life, my finances, and my self-respect. My next stop was a real estate office. If I was going to start fresh, why not do it in a new home? My current house held too many painful memories now. Within a week, I had listed my modest suburban home and made an offer on a beautiful waterfront condominium in a luxury building downtown. Something I'd always secretly wanted, but had denied myself out of habit, and a misplaced sense that Frank wouldn't have approved of such an extravagance. But Frank had always encouraged me to enjoy life. "We work to live, Doris not live to work," he'd often said. It was time I honored that philosophy. Dorothy and Evelyn fully supported my decisions. They helped me sort through decades of accumulated possessions, deciding what to keep, donate, or discard. The process was cathartic, each item carefully considered rather than automatically preserved for Alex's future. "You know what's ironic?" Dorothy said as we packed up photo albums. "You're finally doing what Alex accused you of not doing. Fitting in with the wealthy, except you're doing it on your own terms with your own money and with your dignity intact." I laughed, a genuine laugh that felt foreign after months of grief. "You're right, but I'm not doing it to impress anyone or to buy my way into some exclusive social circle. I'm doing it because I've earned it." As weeks passed, I settled into my new life. I joined a book club in my building, volunteered at the art museum Frank and I had loved, and even took an introductory painting class, something I'd always wanted to try but never made time for. I also began taking a more active role in managing my investments, rather than leaving it to my financial advisor. It was intellectually stimulating and empowering to direct my own financial future. Throughout this time, I hadn't heard a word from Alex about the unpaid wedding bill, but I knew it was only a matter of time. The confrontation came 2 months after the wedding. Alex had called several times and left increasingly demanding voicemails about the unpaid bill. Following Thomas's advice, I hadn't responded. "Let him come to you," Thomas had suggested. "And when he does, stand your ground." On a Saturday afternoon, the doorman called to announce visitors. "Mrs. Harris, your son and his wife are here. They don't have an appointment. Shall I send them up?" I took a deep breath. "Yes, please do." Minutes later, my doorbell rang. I opened it to find Alex and Veronica standing there, both looking shocked to find me in a luxury high-rise with a doorman and lake views. "Mom," Alex said, confusion evident in his voice. "You moved. Why didn't you tell me?" "Come in." I replied, ignoring the question. Would you like some tea or coffee? They followed me into my elegantly appointed living room, decorated in a modern style that bore little resemblance to my previous home. Veronica's eyes darted around, assessing the obvious value of everything. When did you move here? Alex asked, still trying to reconcile this luxurious condo with his image of his modest mother. About a month ago, I replied calmly. Now what can I do for you both today? Alex's expression shifted from confusion to determination. You know why we're here, Mom. The wedding bill. It's been 2 months and you haven't paid anything. Veronica's father is asking questions. I'm not going to pay that bill, Alex, I said simply. What? He exclaimed, genuine shock on his face. But you have to. We've already paid the vendors. We're out $85,000. Let me understand this, I said, keeping my voice level. You had a wedding I wasn't permitted to attend because I might embarrass you in front of Veronica's wealthy friends. Now you expect me to pay for half of that wedding. Is that correct? Mom, we've been over this. The guest list was complicated. It wasn't personal. Not being invited to my only child's wedding felt extremely personal, Alex. Veronica, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, finally spoke up. This is ridiculous. Parents pay for their children's weddings. That's how it works. Actually, I replied, traditionally the bride's family pays for the wedding, but more importantly, parents who are respected and included in their children's lives might choose to contribute to wedding costs. Parents who are deliberately excluded and treated as embarrassments generally don't. So this is what revenge, Alex demanded. You're punishing us. No, Alex. I'm establishing a boundary, something I should have done years ago when you started treating me like an ATM rather than your mother. We'll sue you, Veronica threatened. My father has excellent attorneys. You're welcome to try, I replied calmly. But as I wasn't consulted about any of these expenses before they were incurred, and as I was explicitly uninvited from the event in question, you won't have much of a case. You're my mother, Alex shouted, his face red with anger. You're supposed to support me, and you're my son. You're supposed to treat me with basic respect and decency. The doorbell rang again. I smiled, knowing exactly who it was. Excuse me a moment. I opened the door to find Thomas Wright standing there right on schedule. We had arranged this timing carefully. Right on time, Tom. Please come in. My son and daughter-in-law are here discussing the wedding bill. Thomas entered briefcase in hand and introduced himself to Alex and Veronica. Mrs. Harris asked me to be present for this conversation, given its legal implications. You brought a lawyer to talk to your own son? Alex asked incredulously. Yes, just as you brought me a bill without any discussion or consent. Thomas sat beside me on the sofa. Mrs. Harris has asked me to inform you that she will not be paying any portion of your wedding expenses. Furthermore, she has instructed me to tell you that she has recently updated her estate plans. Alex's expression changed instantly. The anger gave way to calculation. What estate plans? Your mother has established the Frank Harris Memorial Scholarship Fund, which will receive the majority of her estate upon her passing. You will receive her previous home and a modest trust fund with monthly disbursements. What previous home? She sold it. Alex gestured around the luxury condo. Yes, and purchased this property, which will eventually be sold to fund the scholarship. Alex's face paled. But what about the rest? Mom's not wealthy. I decided it was time for complete honesty. Actually, Alex, I am. I've managed my investments quite successfully over the years. My portfolio is currently valued at over $7 million. Both Alex and Veronica stared at me in stunned silence. 7 million? Veronica finally whispered. Give or take depending on market fluctuations, I replied. And you're giving it all away, Alex's voice cracked. To strangers instead of your own son. I'm honoring your father's memory and his lifelong commitment to education, I corrected him. And I'm acknowledging the reality of our relationship as it stands today. This is insane, Veronica spat. You can't do this. She absolutely can, Thomas interjected. The documents are executed and legally binding. Veronica turned on Alex, her facade of sophistication crumbling. You said your mother was middle class. You said there wouldn't be much inheritance, but at least it would all come to you. You said she had no idea about money management. The truth was dawning on Alex's face. He had underestimated me catastrophically, both financially and in terms of my willingness to stand up for myself. Mom, please, he said, his voice taking on the pleading tone I remembered from when he was a child wanting an extra cookie. I'm sorry about the wedding. We made a mistake. We can fix this. This isn't just about the wedding, Alex. It's about years of taking me for granted, of treating me as less than. It's about the fact that you only came here today because you wanted money, not because you missed your mother or felt remorse for excluding me from your wedding. That's not true, he protested weakly. Isn't it? When was the last time you called me just to talk, to ask how I was doing, to share something about your life that wasn't related to a financial request? He had no answer. Veronica was looking at him with undisguised contempt. I can't believe this. You've ruined everything. My father was right about you all along. She stormed out of the condo, leaving Alex standing there looking lost. I think you should go, I said gently. Take some time to think about what kind of relationship you want with me moving forward. If and when you're ready to rebuild one based on mutual respect rather than financial expectations, my door will be open. Is there any way to change the will back? He asked, still focused on the money. I sighed. That question tells me you're not ready yet, Alex. Please go. After they left, Thomas placed a supportive hand on my shoulder. You did well, Doris. Frank would be proud. Would he? I wondered aloud. His only son has turned into someone he wouldn't recognize. You've given Alex a chance to find his way back, Thomas said. That's all any parent can do. As I stood by my window later that evening, watching the sunset over Lake Michigan, I felt a complex mixture of grief and peace. I had lost the son I thought I had, but I had reclaimed myself in the process. 6 months passed, bringing significant changes to my life. My new condominium became a true home filled with new friends and activities. I joined the building's social committee, organizing events that brought neighbors together. I traveled. A riverboat cruise through Europe, something Frank and I had always planned to do someday. The Frank Harris Memorial Scholarship Fund became official, and I had the pleasure of meeting the first 3 recipients, bright, dedicated students from underprivileged backgrounds who reminded me so much of the students Frank had mentored during his teaching career. Your husband must have been an extraordinary man, one young woman told me at the scholarship reception. I promise to make you both proud. I hadn't heard directly from Alex since our confrontation, though Dorothy occasionally passed along bits of information from Brian. According to these reports, Veronica had left Alex just weeks after discovering he wouldn't inherit millions. Apparently, her interest had always been primarily financial, something Alex had been too blinded by status to recognize. Then, on a crisp October morning, an envelope arrived with Alex's handwriting on it. Inside was a letter. Not typed, but handwritten, something he hadn't done since middle school, thank you notes that I had insisted upon. Dear Mom, it began. I've started and torn up this letter a dozen times. Nothing I write seems adequate to address how deeply I've hurt you and how ashamed I am of my behavior. When Veronica left me, I was devastated. Not because I'd lost her. Our relationship had always been more about status than love, but because I finally saw clearly what I'd become. I'd traded my real family, you, for the illusion of belonging to Veronica's world. I've spent these months reflecting on who I am and who I want to be. I've been seeing a therapist, trying to understand how I could have treated the person who loved me most with such callous disregard. I don't expect forgiveness. I'm not writing to ask for money or to discuss the inheritance. I'm writing because I miss my mom. I miss Sunday dinners and talks about books and your advice and just knowing you're there. If you're willing, I'd like to meet for coffee sometime. Just to talk. I understand if you're not ready or if you need more time. Whatever you decide, please know that I am deeply sorry for the pain I've caused you. With love and regret, Alex. I read the letter 3 times, searching for manipulative undertones or hidden agendas. I found none. For the first time in years, my son's words seemed genuine. After careful consideration, I texted him, "Coffee on Thursday, Lakefront Cafe, 10 a.m. His response came immediately. "I'll be there. Thank you, Mom." When Thursday arrived, I spotted Alex waiting outside the cafe, looking nervous. He had lost weight, and the designer clothes and expensive watch were gone, replaced by a simple sweater and jeans. He looked more like the son I remembered from before Veronica. "Mom," he said when he saw me, his voice cracking slightly. "Thank you for coming." We found a quiet table by the window. For several moments, neither of us spoke. "I don't know where to begin," Alex finally said. "I've rehearsed this conversation 100 times, but now that you're here..." "Why don't you start with what happened with Veronica?" I suggested. Alex nodded. "She left 2 weeks after we came to your condo. When she realized I wasn't getting a multi-million-dollar inheritance, suddenly all her talk about love and partnership evaporated. She told me I wasn't Blackwell material after all." "I'm sorry you were hurt," I said sincerely. "Don't be. It was the wake-up call I needed. After she left, I started seeing how I'd changed, how I'd betrayed everything you and Dad taught me about what really matters in life." "And what is that, Alex?" "Family, integrity, treating people with respect regardless of their bank account or social status." He looked down at his coffee. "Everything I forgot when I met Veronica." We talked for hours. Alex explained how Veronica and her family had gradually convinced him that his middle-class upbringing was something to be ashamed of, something to overcome, rather than be proud of. How they'd isolated him from his old friends and family, creating an echo chamber where status and wealth were the only metrics of worth. "I'm not blaming them entirely," he clarified. "I made my choices. I wanted to believe I could be part of their world, that I was special and deserving of luxury without working for it. I betrayed you and Dad's values because it was easier than standing up for what I knew was right." "The wedding bill," I said quietly. "Whose idea was that?" Alex flushed with shame. "It was Edward's initially. He said if I really wanted to join their social circle, I needed to manage my family connections better. He suggested asking you to contribute to show your support. But the wording of the note, that was all me. I was trying to impress him with how effectively I could handle you." The honesty was painful but necessary. "And now," I asked, "what do you want going forward?" "Just a chance to rebuild our relationship," he said simply. "Not for money or inheritance or anything else. I miss my mom. I miss the person I was when I was your son." I reached across the table and took his hand. "You've always been my son, Alex. Even when I was angriest with you, I never stopped loving you. But loving someone doesn't mean allowing them to treat you poorly." "I understand that now," he said. "I don't expect immediate forgiveness or for things to go back to the way they were. I just want a chance to earn back your trust one day at a time." In the months that followed, Alex and I began the slow process of rebuilding our relationship. We started with weekly coffee dates, gradually progressing to occasional dinners. He asked about the scholarship fund and began volunteering with the selection committee reading applications, and mentoring recipients. I didn't change my will back. The Frank Harris Memorial Scholarship Fund remained my primary beneficiary, but I did adjust some provisions to acknowledge Alex's efforts to change. More importantly, I stopped measuring our relationship in financial terms at all. When Alex met Jennifer, a kindergarten teacher with a kind heart and firm boundaries, I was cautiously optimistic. When she firmly shut down his occasional backsliding into entitled behavior, I was delighted. When they decided to have a small, intimate wedding and asked me not only to attend, but to play a central role in the ceremony, I was overjoyed. Standing beside my son at his wedding to Jennifer, I thought about the journey we'd taken, the pain, the betrayal, the long road back to each other. I thought about Frank and how proud he would be of the man Alex was becoming. Not the entitled social climber he'd been with Veronica, but the thoughtful, grounded person who now understood that genuine relationships couldn't be bought or sold. I realized that my decision to stand up for myself, to refuse to pay that wedding bill to establish clear boundaries, had been the greatest gift I could have given my son. It forced him to confront who he'd become and make the difficult choice to change. Sometimes, the most loving thing we can do for our children is to show them that our love has limits, not in depth, but in what it will tolerate. I learned that it's never too late to establish boundaries, to demand respect, to value yourself enough to walk away from toxic relationships, even with your own child. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with someone you love? How did you find the strength to stand your ground? Share your stories in the comments below. And if this tale of a mother's journey resonated with you, please subscribe, and share with someone who might need to hear it. Remember that true love, whether parental, romantic, or friendship, must include respect to be healthy. Thank you for joining me today, and may you always find the courage to value yourself in every relationship.